The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
It's the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Hall of Fame wrestling writer, broadcaster, and announcer Jason Bryant. And this show talks news, reviews, previews, and interviews from all sorts of notable names in the sport of wrestling. Today on the program, we're going to be talking with Ashley Sword. She is the head women's wrestling coach at Life University in Marietta, Georgia. The Life Running Eagles will be hosting the WCWA Women's Nationals, the 16th iteration at the Cobb County Civic Center, February 8th and 9th. That is outside the perimeter for those of you familiar with the geography and layout of the ATLGA, or, if you were watching the Super Bowl, you'd have some outcasts. By the way, Super Bowl. Yeah. You know what? I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I'm a Bucs fan, which usually means I check out around week 2, week 3 of the season. The 90s were very rough for me. And when that one Super Bowl commercial that the NFL put out, when Barry Sanders is running through the ballroom, I had nightmares, because if you looked at Barry Sanders in the NFL, who were his highlights against? Yes, most of them were record-setting performances against the creamsicle uniform of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yes, the 90s were very rough, especially with my friend Sean Vaughn down the street, was a Barry Sanders and Detroit Lions fan. Yes, he had the starter jacket for the Detroit Lions. I was the one kid at Gildersleeve Middle School in Newport News, Virginia, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers starter coat as well. The only cool thing about that is when I went on bus trips with the semi-pro football team, the Peninsula Poseidons, that's a throwback from 91, 92, the guys on the football team called me Hampton, because at the time, Hampton University and their athletics Pirates logo was the one that was used by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It was just, theirs was blue and silver, where the Bucs was, orange, red, and white. Bucko Bruce, may you rest in peace. Yes, I had the hat. Yes, I had the helmet. In case this is your first time listening to the program, no, I do not talk about, well, actually, you know what? I do talk about random stuff here in the open typically, but give you an update on who's going to be on the show, some things that are going on, and how you can listen. And if you're a return visitor to this program, how you can support not just this show, but this network. First things first, our latest patron of the program, Adrian Stewart, a good friend of mine from back in the day in PA and Delaware Beast of the East. Adrian and I spent a lot of late nights working on pairings and teams to get into the Beast, and maybe a Chardonnay or two at the TGI Fridays. And by Chardonnay, I usually mean some swill. Whether it be, actually, no, we're in Delaware. We were drinking Yingling. We were drinking lager. That was the correct, terminology for it. So we weren't drinking the Bud Light or the Coors Light or the Miller Lite, whichever one has corn syrup or not. Oh, another Super Bowl throwback. But, Adrian Stewart, the latest add-on to, latest team member. And if you want to see who those team members are, or if you want to contribute and be part of the team, go to matttalkonline.com/contribute, and that will give you a full list of the people that actually each and every week, each and every episode support this program, support this network, support the history that I'm trying to document and the stories I'm trying to tell here in the sport of wrestling. Not all the stories you hear on this program are from the names. I say notable names in wrestling. Not everybody is of the most, it's not like words are coming out. Oh yeah, I know who that guy is. Yeah. Well, sometimes I'm bringing you stories of people that should be notable, and their stories are notable. So that's what I mean when I say, notable names and topics in the sport of wrestling here on the program. Other things to talk about. Yes, the preview guide, the guide, as I call it, the Matt Talk Online Division I Wrestling Championship preview guide is available for pre-sale. This thing will be released. And the way the calendar works this year, you're going to actually get it a week early. Because in the past, I'd have to go from announcing Division IIIs to get the guide done, to get it out, stay up all through the night. I wouldn't sleep. I'd put it out and release it on the Tuesday right before the NCAA Division I's. This year, the calendar is much more beneficial. I will have a whole week to work and market this thing. So if you want to get the baddest thing ever produced, and I mean bad, like bad, badass, let's be honest, it is one of the greatest publications that I have ever had the pleasure of producing. And I'm not just saying that because it's awesome, but no, it is an award-winning publication. It was credited as Publication of the Year by the National Wrestling Media Association, of which, full disclosure, I am the president, but I did not vote for myself. I did not nominate myself. I actually abstained from voting for that award. But it is every single stat on every single wrestler, everything you want to know about the athletes at Division I championships coming up in Pittsburgh. That is on sale now, pre-sale. Retails for $19.99. I've actually got a quick link for you too. It's WrestlingPreviewGuide.com. Takes you right to the sale page. Now, if you listen to this show, you know that I like to throw out promo codes out there. I have probably 15 promo codes to get you to save $5 on this thing. The one for this show, the one I want you to use to save $5 on this, is simply JB, my initials. Yes. Go to WrestlingPreviewGuide.com. And when you check out, use JB in that promotional code, that offer code, and that will drop $5 off your order. Now, there are a couple promo codes out there that a couple podcasts are helping me market with. They're in a competition on, if you like the Inside Trip guys, they've got a promo code. You like the Blood Round guys, they've got a promo code. If you're part of the Wrestling Insider on Facebook, they've got a promo code. So go out and look for them. It's worth every penny of the $19.99 that I put into it. Hours and hours and, just weeks and almost years of research have gone into building this. So it is one of my my pride and joy, so to speak. Even though I love all my kids equally, all 25 shows that are on the network, some that have gone away to college, some who have gone to retire, but the preview guide it's just outstanding. And again, I do it, but it's every single result, and if you don't believe me, I want you to go to WrestlingPreviewGuide.com. If you click over, you can also see a video I put out. I'll put it out on YouTube, but if you want a quick hit, I've got the video quickly available at MattTalkOnline.com/fanguide19. So I realize I've thrown a lot of calls to action out there. So Adrian Stewart, he's a guy that, based on his level of giving on the Patreon that I just mentioned, he's going to get that guide for free because he contributes throughout the year on the Patreon side of things. That's patreon.com/MattTalkOnline. You want to buy it one off? WrestlingPreviewGuide.com. You want to save $5? Promo code JB. A lot of sales pitch there, but trust me, it's people, when they finally get their hands on it and they see it, they're like, and I've been doing this since probably 2014. This is my 6th or 7th year doing it. And realistically, not a whole lot of people get it. That way, if you've got a fantasy pool or something like that, or a fantasy pick'em league, this is your secret weapon. Everybody's going to be trying to Google this stuff or look up on Tracker. I've got it all. You just tab over, swipe over. I've got it for you. Yeah. There's a video at MattTalkOnline.com/fanguide19. And again, I'm not being brief with this at all. That goes through 2 minutes. You'll get a once over of what is in this thing from last year. And I'm only going to add more to it. So that pitch being said, we're going to talk with Ashley Sword here on the program. Man, me and Ashley go way back. You'll find out exactly how far back and how we came to be friends over the years in the wonderful world of the internet. That's Short Time, episode 492. You got any questions or comments for me? Hit me up on Twitter. I'm at Jason M. Bryant on Instagram with the same name. Also, Matt Talk Online is also on Instagram at Matt Talk Online. Same thing on Twitter. So that's what I got for you. Here's my friend Ashley down in Georgia, Cobb County Civic Center. Oh, yeah, there's going to be pro wrestling references all over this. Strap in, buckle up. Here comes the swoosh. And welcome back. Another episode of the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. All the formalities aside, our guest today, her and I go way back. We're talking about 18 years to the wonderful world of AOL and unsolicited emails and trying to save wrestling programs and build women's wrestling. Ashley Sword, the head women's wrestling coach at Life University. They are the Running Eagles, and they are the host of this upcoming weekend's WCWA National Championships at the Cobb County Civic Center in Marietta, Georgia. I'm sorry, my professional wrestling roots are just coming back to me. I'm just hearing Jim Ross say Cobb County Civic Center on NWA Wrestling. Ashley, what's up?
Mostly right now, my age, apparently, since we've known each other for 18 years. My God, Jason, thanks. Thanks for that. My heart's broken now.
We can't. That's a story. We got to tell this story here before we even begin. Before we even talk about the Cobb County Civic Center, the WCWA Nationals coming up, Marietta. It's outside the perimeter, in case you're wondering. That is okay. So back in 2000, I was Matt Talk Online, which is the site you're listening to this show on. Was a different format. It was a Virginia high school wrestling site, and I was doing a little bit of college wrestling as I was at that particular year taking a semester off from my academic rigorous training there at Old Dominion University, and at the time Longwood College, which still sucks if you ask me. They dropped the wrestling program, and I was putting together a petition drive. And I was going to go out and meet with the AD, the president, and drop these petitions off. Well, I get this email from wrestlingprincess@AOL.com. And so first things first, I'm naturally, I don't want to say cynical, but I'm like, okay, my training as a journalist, I'm like, is this my friend Chia, who also had a very similar username on my wrestling forums back then? So what do? What anybody does with Instant Messenger back in the day, and they get an AOL email address, they add that to their buddy list, and then all of a sudden, here's a conversation that begins. Sure enough, Ashley is a high school senior. I want to say Lake Worth or Lake Mary? I get the two confused. Lake Worth, Florida. And the email was to me about why Longwood should start a women's wrestling pro. And this is in 2000, mind you. So there's this high school senior.
I was very progressive. I was ahead of my time, clearly, obviously.
Yes, and so and at the time too, when it's not like a total weird thing to just like to add somebody to the buddy list, get like, hey, what's up? You know, it was totally not a problem back in 2000.
It was simpler times then, really.
Yes, less creepy, no swipes. Basically it was like, that was the way people communicated. So to fast forward 5 years. So I get hired at Intermat after I get out of college. And then, so Ashley and I have been talking as friends for, you become friends. You don't know. It's like what the internet was back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Okay. So I missed my flight because I'm hungover from my first event working with Intermat. This is such a great lesson. And so I end up having to drive to Des Moines. I had my breakfast in my hand. I fell asleep watching SportsCenter because I was about to get my breakfast and drive to Des Moines. Well, I fell asleep, woke up 4 hours later going, well, missed my flight. So apparently a bunch of other wrestlers were hung over after the World Team Trials. And I'm not going to say,
oh my God.
I don't believe you were one of them just because you're a college coach, and whether or not my memory might have been fuzzy. I'm not sure about yours. So I'm standing there and there's.
I got bumped from my flight, and I got like a $300 voucher.
That's the win for you.
Completely innocent.
Okay, so she's innocent. So here I am on this shuttle bus after I've returned my rental car, and I noticed Christy Morano, now Christy Davis, talking, and we're talking about Sarah, and I was annoyed. This is after, and Sarah McMahon at the time wasn't doing media requests, and it was, she had gone through a life issue that we won't really touch on again, but there was some things. Sarah wasn't doing interviews, and I was, as a journalist, I'm going, well, we're not all going to ask her about it. And then I look at you and I'm like, are you Ashley? You just kind of nod.
I was just like, and then you introduced yourself by your AOL screen name.
I absolutely did. Hi, ODU Wildman. That was how our in-person friendship began. And now look at us.
And now look at it.
It took us like 5 minutes to get to the hook of that story. If you're still with us now, bless you for listening to this episode. But what we have to talk about today, we're going to talk about the WCWA. We're going to talk about Ashley's background. She's got a very interesting background, what led her to college coaching and also a lengthy college career, just like me. Only yours was actually on the wrestling mats. But first things first, you wrestled in Florida. First of all, how did you discover wrestling and the fact that women's wrestling was an opportunity?
Well, I started wrestling my junior year of high school, and I started wrestling because, honestly, I wasn't really good at anything else. My older brother wrestled while I was growing up, and I always just really loved the sport. And one night I was watching my friends at a duel and was helping roll up mats because, that's what you do, I guess. And we started goofing off. They were like, well, you know how to crossface. We need a 140-pounder. And that, I guess, worked out in my favor because I was on the team. It also was tragic for me because I was 140 pounds and was on varsity and had never wrestled in my life. So I was wrestling grown men, and that was less than,
that sucks for first year guys. I mean, let's be clear here.
Yeah. It was, every day was a hard day. But, like I said, I wasn't really great at anything else, so I stuck with it. I'm a little stubborn, one might say.
No.
Stuck with it throughout the summer, did USA stuff, just was doing stuff at the club all summer, and came back and did better my senior year. And at that point, there were only 3 colleges that had women's wrestling. Do you remember the first 3, Jason?
Let's see if I can. Minnesota Morris.
Yep.
Missouri Valley. And let's see, who would the third have been? Probably then Cumberland College, now the University of the Cumberlands.
Well done. Well done.
Most people forget Minnesota Morris, but that was the first one. And that was where everybody went first.
Yes, absolutely. That's where Katie Downing and Katie Kriebel now and Sarah McMahon, that's where they started at. And then Lock Haven, of course, was its own monster, not that long after. But I'm a South Florida girl, and so Minnesota was a little too cold for my thin Florida blood. And I ended up going to Missouri Valley for a year and had the most epic failures of a freshman year. Just really struggled being away from home. I'm kind of a little bit the poster child for a female wrestler. A lot of us are first generation college students, don't first time away from home, don't really understand a whole lot about the college system and how things work. And so I really, really, really struggled, that first year. Went home and was able to kind of get my life together and got the opportunity to move out to Olympic Training Center. And was there for almost 4 years and went to community college there and got my grades back up and, just really got my life together after the glorious year that was my brilliant 18 to 19-year-old year, as I'm sure so many of us have had.
Yeah, my freshman year was so great. I did it 3 times. Now, I'm also curious, the Missouri Valley program too. I mean, the people that have come through there, who was just list off some of the names that were at Mo-Val when you were there.
First and foremost, Clarissa Chun, and those of us who are in the know, Clarissa, Olympic bronze medalist, now assistant national team coach at the Olympic Training Center under Terry Steiner. She's the one that just, pops into my head as most storied in that moment while I was there.
So you go there, you get things figured out at the training center, and I'm curious. I mean, what was more brutal for you as a wrestler? The first year wrestling 140 against the boys, or working with Christy as a training partner every day?
I would say Olympic Training Center, bar none. So let me paint a picture for you. I am, it's January of 2003. I am,
16 years ago. 16 years ago. Wow.
Thanks. Appreciate that. I am 19. I am, walking in, and I'm coming out of high school where, again, I was on the guys team. I did well in Florida. I did pretty well nationally. Coming straight out of high school, I was the top recruit at my weight class for the graduating senior. I wasn't the number 1 girl. I think I was like 4 or 5, but still top ranked senior. And I think that I'm amazing. And I get to college and I get the crap kicked out of me because everyone's done at least that. Plus, of course, Tori Adams was at Missouri Valley and she was senior national team member. I've got Melissa Sherwood was there. Tanya Evinger was there. And then I go home, try and get my life right, move out to Olympic Training Center. And I'm a now punching bag for Christy Davis, Ben Moreno, Sarah McMahon, Katie Downing, Iris Smith, Sally Roberts. Pick somebody. I got to work with them. My first real rude awakening as a female who had only been wrestling at that point for 3 years was one of the other athletes came to me. We were getting ready to, the brackets for the Schultz had just come out. So I moved out in early January. Schultz was getting ready to start. And they're like, man, Ashley, your weight class is loaded. Here, look at this. And they, have a printed bracket and they're like, there's a world champ in each pool. And I'm in the pool with Christy. And I was like, well, who's the world champ in my pool? And they're like, are you serious right now? I'm like, I don't know anything. I'm stupid. I'm sorry. but again, at that point, Christy's my roommate. And so I'm so naive. I don't know anything. And she's my roommate. I'm not thinking of anything except here's this other wrestler who I'm working with every day and obviously has been wrestling longer than me, but I have zero clue as to what's going on. And I learned a lot in, that first couple of months and then proceeded to learn even more after that. But yeah, that was a rude awakening for sure.
Yeah. And your path through wrestling is interesting as you're explaining, but then there are more women's programs being added, and there's new programs popping up almost everywhere. It's not just the 3 or the 4 teams. Morris eventually dropped both its men's and women's programs. Then we're starting to see schools in the NAIA start to adopt. We're starting to see, Oklahoma City pops up, and Ashley all of a sudden ends up wrestling as a star at Oklahoma City University. And that's not just, that's not me giving you a super compliment. That just happens to be their mascot. So, Coach Archie Randall at the time brought in a pretty aggressive recruiting class. Later had Christy on his team years after you, but, coming in, you and Nicole Woody were part of that group. And, what made you want to go and try the college wrestling thing again?
Well, it's actually super funny. Christy is so interwoven into my story. Anyone that knows us isn't shocked. They're just like, yep, that's how it happened.
We will not talk about the trip to Ross Dress for Less. We'll leave that one out.
Yes, that's best. Sometimes you forget stuff on your way to Vegas. You have to just pick something up. But, when Christy Link Davis was the assistant coach at OCU at the time. He's now coaching. Him and Christy are now married, and they're at Emmanuel College, which ironically is 2 hours away from where we're at in Marietta. And I went with her, honestly, so she could meet Link. And then, of course, they ended up getting married later. But I wasn't thriving at the training center for probably a couple different reasons. One, still being a little bit young and dumb, quite frankly. Also, I was running into a situation where I wasn't the number one girl. And while, it's good training, it's hard when you don't feel like there's any focus on you. And rightly, I wasn't the world champion. I shouldn't have been the focus. There's a different job there. But I needed to go to school and I needed to kind of figure out my life. And so when we went out to Oklahoma for Christy and Link to meet, I met Archie and kind of talked to him about the opportunity there. I was like, well, I'm older now. I'm more focused on school. I'm more focused on wrestling. Let's just see what happens. And so it was just kind of an opportunity that sort of presented itself, and just kind of took a risk and jumped right into it.
Yeah. Also, you had an OW award at the National Duels one year too.
I did actually that first year that the NWCA had women's wrestling in the National Duels, and in 2008 I did get OW. Rumor has it that you may have had some information about that.
I might have had some, but you were politicking for one of your teammates. I think it was Lacey Novinska. You were really pushing for her to get the OW, and we threw some names out there, and of course, knowing the background of people, I'm like, what do you think about Ashley? And we looked at your record, and everybody kind of agreed. But you were pushing hard for your teammate. That was one thing that I found cool about that whole thing.
Well, Lacey, I do remember Lacey wrestled her tail off at that tournament.
She destroyed everyone. Like, if we weren't friends, complete transparency here. Yeah, I probably put you up there because I knew you. Yeah. Although you did win all your matches, made it easy.
Right. Well, having all pins doesn't hurt, but
no, it doesn't at all. As Ashley tries to lessen the sting of the collusion that happened. No, just go ahead.
I didn't know there was collusion. All I knew was that I was out in the locker room trying to get ready, and I get a phone call from the coaches that I need to come out immediately. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. And, they tell me that I got OW. And at that point, I was like, how is that possible? Then, of course, Archie being Archie tried to say that you only got it if you were present to accept it. So they gave it to someone else. So I was like, oh, well, that's unfortunate, but okay. But obviously then he, handed me the award and proceeded to harass me for the entire drive back to Oklahoma City. But it was something that was really cool, and I didn't really understand it as much then, but looking back, especially last year, coaching at the national duels and having that idea of, oh, wow, 10 years ago, which is also painful, but 10 years ago, I was at the first national duels for women, and I was, considered outstanding wrestler. And, that it kind of hit me last year while we were at the tournament, how, meaningful that actually was and is, to me now, and looking back on in the sport in general. So kind of a cool thing.
Now that year you ended up finishing a second in the WCWA is 2008. Yeah, we're coming up 10, 11 years ago now. Moving in now, you're coaching, and you got out of wrestling for a little bit, got drawn back into it. Explain how you ended up at Life University coaching with a guy named Dave Matthews, and no, not that Dave Matthews.
So I moved to Atlanta, and there's just, I was sort of, I wasn't thinking about wrestling. I was thinking about getting my PhD and getting my Doctor of Veterinary Medicine. My plan was to work at the CDC and study infectious diseases, quite frankly, to find the outbreak monkey. For those of us that are old enough to have seen Outbreak, for those of us that are a little bit younger, the Ebola scare that was kind of going on at the same time.
This is the second Outbreak reference I've had in a week. I cannot remember. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and it was another reference about Outbreak. So, wow. So, yeah, showing the age here, because I believe that was two older gentlemen talking about that movie.
I mean, it's a good movie. We made the girls watch it on the way to a trip a couple months ago. And
they never want to see a monkey again.
Yes. So, that's where my focus was. And I actually, about the same time I found out I was moving to Atlanta, and by that I mean the 2 days before I found out I was moving to Atlanta, it's weird how it all gets kind of wrapped in there. Christy and Link found out they were going to be moving to Emmanuel. So I called her to tell her I'm moving to Atlanta. And she said, that's crazy. I'm moving 2 hours away from there. Of course, everyone's like, the universe is conspiring against the rest of us to keep you guys together. But, when she was moving out here, I said something on Facebook. I was like, hey, congratulations. Excited to have you. And Sherry Horton from Team Georgia sent me a message on Facebook and was like, hey, I saw that you know Christy Davis. Did you ever wrestle? And I kind of laughed. I was like, yeah, I did. And I didn't really get into it too much with her, but I was like, yeah, I was involved. And she's like, well, we'd like to have you be a part of Team Georgia. And there's actually a college nearby called Life University. And so I looked it up. I'm like, oh, it's only like 17 miles away. That's awesome. I could, she got me in touch with Dave, and I went up to a couple practices and then ended up volunteering basically for the next 2 years while I was taking classes and working at a veterinary hospital. And he ended up, stepping down to take the job at USA Wrestling, doing a lot of stuff with computers. And I don't really know his entire job title, but I know it involves fixing code. And, the head coach position opened up. And at the time, I wasn't, like, when it first opened up, it wasn't a full-time position, and I was kind of iffy on applying. And when it came full-time, they decided it was going to be full-time, I thought, let me see what happens. And again, it was hard because it was such a change from what my plan had been. I joke when I talk with parents when they say, is this your dream job? And no, it's not, because I never even had the dream that this could be a job for me. Obviously while I was wrestling in college, there weren't any female coaches. I think I was like the 6th woman to be hired as a head coach of a college wrestling program in the U.S. ever. And, there's several more women now since I was hired that have been hired as head coaches, but it's hard to consider something a dream job when you never thought it was a possibility. And so kind of for me, was a risk, I was on a good track to do a PhD and become a veterinarian. And, that's a pretty good paycheck and a pretty solid line of work. And I just, I was in love, back in love with wrestling. Of course, I love my athletes. It's hard because you often hear like, well, they're adults, don't call them girls, but they're my girls. We joke, like, you're like my daughters. One of the girls calls me Coach Mommy, honestly, because her mom and I look so much alike. It's actually really funny. But, I fell in love with my team, and I fell back in love with the sport and being able to give to them what I felt like I needed when I was going through the sport, and the guidance I needed, and just that difference of, a wrestler's a wrestler, but having a female coach is a little different in some ways. The experiences have been different, and I understand them from a very real place. And so, I just kind of fell back into this life, pun intended, all the way.
What's really interesting is about the journey is you have 3 different instances of coming into the WCWA, the Women's College Wrestling, first again with one of those first 3 schools, then later on, almost 10 years later, and then I don't want to say 10, maybe 7, 8 years later, whatever the math is. I'm bad at math. That's why I had 3 freshman years. So, well, you've had 3 different runs in the WCWA, 2 as an athlete, now 1 as a coach. And what have you seen from women's wrestling at the college level as a whole, in the changes that have happened, the depth that it's created for USA Wrestling, and the opportunities that, you back things up to 2000 and look at, if you'd have had 30, 40, 50 different college wrestling programs, your life may have been, charting a different course now. So, I mean, there's so many different things that change. Just talk about the growth and what you've seen, just what it's meant for women's wrestling to have these college programs as an option.
Well, I think by the numbers, first and foremost, like when I graduated high school, there were about 4,000 girls that wrestled in high school in 2001. And now there are close to 16,000, which is huge. I mean, it's maybe not as fast as we would like, but that's still, that jump, again, from 3 colleges to now, I think, are we up to 43, 45 now?
I think it's 47. And then I know there's 30. So based on the list you just sent me for the WCWA championships, which again, Cobb County Civic Center, February 8th and 9th. I'm just kidding. Those are also streamed live on Flow Wrestling. There's 37 teams entered in the WCWA Nationals. We'll kind of explain why that's not the full allotment of 47 here in a bit, because there's an NAIA tournament this year as well. And, we'll get into the nuances and the scheduling in a bit later. But yeah, we're at 37, at least for the WCWA, almost approaching 50 for all of them across all divisions, whether it be junior college, the NCWA with a couple teams, we got those schools up in the Northwest, Division II, Division III, still no, Division I waiting in the wings with Presbyterian starting next year. So yes, long answer to a short question.
Right. So, again, like you said, there are all of these choices, and 18-year-old Ashley, a gazillion years ago, if I had to choose, I would not have chosen Missouri, just because, again, cold. And 18-year-old Ashley did not want to go anywhere cold. And we see so many more opportunities. And it's baffling to me. There are athletes that come in that, even though I've been wrestling longer than they've been alive, some of them, which is painful. When I look at, hey, they're 18, they're coming into college, how many years of wrestling experience do they have coming into college versus my 2 years? It's shocking to me, in the best possible way, to see that the girls have these opportunities, and it really makes my heart happy. We actually had a moment last week when our dean of students brought her daughter to watch a match a couple weeks ago, and then happened to walk onto campus, and her daughter saw the men's team practicing, and she looked up at her mom and was like, "Mom, I didn't know boys were allowed to wrestle too." I was like, that is something I never thought I would hear, is that this little girl looked at it and thought, yeah, of course girls wrestle. That's the main thing. Oh, great, boys can do it too. Well, that's nice for them, but really girls are the ones that are supposed to do it. And I think even just that little bit of a mindset switch in itself shows how much we've grown and how much, how far we've come. It's a great opportunity. Like I said, a lot of wrestlers are, as a whole, fighters. That's just who we are, male or female. And we know that for men, it's a majority, like more than any other sport, first generation college students. And with the women, it's the same. And to give these women opportunities to go to college where they maybe wouldn't have had that opportunity, or to finally find a place on a team, and feel like they're a part of a family and feel supported, where maybe they didn't feel that in high school because they felt like they were the burden to the team. Well, coach has to take care of me, as opposed to, no, coach wants me here. to be around, I think we had 34 on the roster this year. And to have, for someone to walk in and they're the only girl on their team in high school and they walk into a mat room in college and they've got 33 other women around them that have the same mindset, that have the same goals, that have the same drive, the same love of the sport, the same, hatred of the scale and of the treadmill. Like, to be able to have those things in common is just amazing. And it just helps propel us further. And again, like yesterday, we went to go get mats in North Georgia, and I think there were 10 of the girls that came with us, came with Christian and I, up to North Georgia so we could get mats. And we went in with one of the youth girls teams, and there were, I would say 15 at least, girls from elementary school through early high school who were there and were excited to have college women in their practice, because regardless of NAIA or JUCO or D3 or 2, or, like you said, Presby is there, but we are D1 for women's wrestling. Regardless of division, where, you could just as easily walk up against a first year wrestler as you could an Olympian. And so for our team to walk in and those girls, you saw the stars in their eyes. You saw them say, "Oh, that's what I want to be one day. That's what I want." It's amazing. It's amazing to see. And I'm really excited to be a part of that, continuing to grow the sport because it's given so much to me, and to be able to give that to the young girls.
Yeah, and being a female, teaching and coaching other females is something that you hear a lot about in other sports, on how the athletes react differently to a male coach, to a female coach. But looking at the leadership and how things have changed, like you said, when you came in, all the women's college coaches were men who were used to coaching other males. Whereas we look at what USA Wrestling is doing, like with Andrea Yamamoto and Joan Falk, with them pushing the high school state associations to add girls wrestling as a sanctioned high school sport. What Sally and Sally Roberts and the crew has done at Wrestle Like a Girl, and even using the name Wrestle Like a Girl, goes back to your story about your administrator with her daughter watching. What's it like to look around and see a trailblazer like Andrea Yamamoto, a mother like Joan Falk, and one of your comrades in arms, Sally Roberts, leading the charge for this next generation of women's athletes who are choosing and looking to wrestling as an option?
I think that really what it says is, we all kind of have that same thought process. Is we want the girls to have the opportunities, not just the opportunities that we had, but more, the opportunities we wish we had. And it's sort of that, as, when you become, well, you're a parent. I've heard it. I'm not technically a parent, even though I feel like I'm foster mom to 34, but. And
I got 2 girls.
You've got 2 girls, and you want them to have more than you had, right? Growing up, you want their life to be better than yours was. Not that your life wasn't good, but you always want more for your children. And I think you kind of see that. You see that with what these women are doing as they push forward. I don't want you to just have what I had. I want you to have more. I want you to have basically everything that we can give you, and, just continuing that push. And it makes me happy that, again, as so many of us, how do I say this kindly to myself? As we start to age out of the competition, I'm glad that we're still, remaining in a leadership role and not just falling away from the sport, which I think happened, maybe happened earlier on, but now because there were more of us, as time goes on, we're able to really just kind of band together and push as hard as we can and grow from the ground up. And it's really exciting to see.
Now, as we shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about what you're doing at Life, you talked about how you ended up at Life as a head coach. And now you brought Christian Flavin in. He had spent some time wrestling up in Nebraska Kearney. He's got some Greco background out there helping you with not just coaching, but also working with Team Georgia in the past. And, how did you bring Christian Flavin into the fray? That's what I'm wondering, because you two just seem like to be, as much as you get along, you guys seem to be very, very different.
Actually, it's super funny you say that. Our academic coordinator looked at me one day and was like, I've never seen 2 people that are more different, but more the same. Like, you guys are so the same, but so different at the same time. And I think it goes back to our stories are very similar. we went to college, maybe didn't do what we wanted in college. We went to the Olympic Training Center, and Christian's pretty famous for saying we were always the bridesmaid, never the bride, I'm not, I was in a tough spot. I was behind Christy and Katie and Sarah. And, I was at one point ranked, I think top 30, 35 in the world. But when you're behind the number 1, 2, and 4 girl, then where do you go from there? Sort of like we saw with our men's freestyle team this year, like how deep were we? And then the weight classes split up and we just took over. And so, we have very similar experiences in that way. Christian was actually looking at joining the Secret Service, when we were doing a lot of camps and things together with Team Georgia. And I was like, I'm just starting out. I know there's a lot of these ladies, and I don't know that I can do it by myself. And let me rephrase. I wanted to be as successful as possible, and to do that, you need to have someone that's going to help you. Where you're maybe not as strong. I think good leaders bring in people that can help. Like, I understand where my weaknesses are. I'm the person that I need to feel a move before I can explain it. And Christian is like a walking encyclopedia of wrestling knowledge. And so I honestly think that he's one of the best technicians in the country. And I truly believe he's one of the best coaches in the country. And I would have wanted him to coach me. And so I wanted to bring in someone who had that experience, who had the same mindset as I did of, understanding the work that goes into just trying to be the best. Because obviously neither of us were Olympians, neither of us were world champions, but that's where we wanted to be. And so when one of our athletes look at us and say, hey, do you know what it takes? Well, I know what it takes to try. I can't promise you you're going to be an Olympian, but I can give you all the tools possible. I can give you everything I've got. And that idea of, hey, I wasn't the number one, and I felt like, I wasn't as important because I wasn't the number one. And so we take that mindset to our athletes and say, we'll be there with you when you win, but we're going to be there closer to you when you lose. Because that's when you need us the most. And I think those experiences, no matter how, different everything else is, those experiences make our coaching, our mindset the same. It's not very often that we're on different pages as far as just a general, our base of what we believe to be successful coaches and what we want out of our athletes. And, what we want out of our athletes when we talked about it more than anything is for them to grow as women, to grow as people. And even, when we coach some of the, the youth, the guys around, obviously we want them to grow as men, and we want them to grow as people. And we feel like if you come to us and all you do is become a better wrestler, then we failed you as coaches. We want you to grow as people. We want you to get a college degree. We want you to be able to walk away and not have to, live under a bridge. Even though you're a 4-time national champion, you can't get a job because you don't have a degree. We want you to have a job that you're going to be happy at, successful at, be able to support your family, not have to move back into your mom's basement just, because you have no choice. If you need to move back home and support your parents, that's a different situation. But, we want you to have options, and we want you to become a better person. And I think just having those talks early on about what we thought we lacked in college and what we saw around us, what we wished other coaches would focus on, it just was, hey, I think, we're both on the same page. We can do this together. We both bring different tools to the game, but, together we can build something great. And I think we have, last year, I think we surprised a lot of people. This year we've had some bumps and bruises, but I think we surprised people with how well we've done. I think we surprised people with people that we signed and brought in this year. I think people are already surprised and a little bit scared about who we've signed for next year. And, it's not just that we're bringing in good athletes, we're bringing in tough athletes that believe in our vision. And, it's exciting.
Now, as far as the school goes, I remember the first time I had ever heard of Life. I mean, I was probably 12 or 13 flipping through ESPN, and they had like the NAIA Division II men's basketball championship on. I know Life made, then it was Life College. I'm like, what the heck? Who the heck are these schools? Like, I was familiar with some small Division I schools, but what the heck is a Life College? Now it's Life University, and just kind of, Life has two very unique things about it. One is its chiropractic program, which is kind of, known nationwide and actually probably worldwide. And two, the rugby culture there. So explain both of those things that as you experience them as an outsider coming in for the first time.
So Life was founded in the 70s as a chiropractic college, and then has in the more recent past, started to develop its undergraduate program, really as a way to ensure that the DC students had the proper education, from a sciences standpoint. And then also, from there to grow the college. And for me, it was the small schools that I have had experiences with were all religious schools. And so one of the biggest things that was different for me was that it's an ongoing joke that we're a holistic school, but we're a hippie school. We just want you to come in and love each other and take care of your body and take care of the planet. And so that was a little bit different. And then rugby, so funny. So rugby is our football. Our rugby teams have been national champions since forever. And Life is sort of one of those schools where we've got all of the quote unquote oddball sports. We've got rugby, we've got women's wrestling, we've got lacrosse, we've got men's volleyball now. No one's ever expecting the bowling team to pop up. And so we've got these sports that are a little bit off the beaten path, but sort of fit with that idea of the idea of a chiropractic college, where it's not quite what you're expecting, but it makes a big impact on you when you see it. And so it was refreshing to see that different take on not just education, but sport as well, and moving away from the traditional.
So we've got what's known for lack of a better, a chiropractic school with a wrestling program. I know when I was walking around the NAI championships a couple years ago, as far as the men's program goes, I'm sitting there walking by and I'm like, oh, there's chiropractic tables. So, Kevin Miller from Maximize Living is here. I'm like, no, that's the Life Wrestlers chiropractic tables that they brought with them. Very odd to see at a wrestling tournament.
And yet at the same time, it's really funny. Like you said, with Maximize Living, we, went up to one of the chiropractors and sort of got the VIP treatment. They're like, oh, you guys are from Life? I didn't even know they had a women's wrestling team. Great. You guys are family. Come on in, and just sort of shuffled us in to the front. So one of the perks, I guess, a lot of chiropractors have gone through Life where just to plug us, we're the largest single campus chiropractic college in the world. And so we've had a lot of foot traffic, through there. And so it's fun to see alumni, and of course, with chiropractic so important to athletes, there's always that tie just back and forth, and people that are really excited. One of the chiropractors that works with our team, because as you might imagine, we get chiropractic care at Life. He was a wrestler and did freestyle and Greco. And so Morgan's been at every single one of our home matches. He's actually bringing a table for the athletes, and our athletes specifically, and some of the coaches and the referees to WCWA Nationals, partially for adjusting, but mostly so he can just come watch more wrestling. So it's really fun to have that tie with everyone.
And of course, one of the interesting facets, a lot of the NAIA programs, is the companion men's team with it. That I had Sam Schmitz on the program last episode. We were talking women's wrestling about McHenry and their championship at the national duels, where he's an assistant for the men's program, the head coach, actually team, because again, Jason Moorman up at King also likes to phrase it where they have a wrestling program and a men's team and a women's team. And, based on Sam and Jason talk about that, you guys have a little dynamic that's also a little differently. As Omi Acosta, the head coach, got like 90 guys on the roster, and I'm not. That's not hyperbole. There's a lot of men's wrestlers also walking around campus at Life, so a lot of wrestlers being brought into that school.
We do. We have a large men's team. We have a large women's team. Omi is doing great things with his team. They just took second at national duels. Last I knew, they were ranked first in the Mid-South Conference. It's been a little crazy with me trying to get the girls ready for nationals and then obviously hosting the tournament. So I haven't kept as good a track as I'd like to on where they're at right now. But they're doing amazing things. They're doing great. I know we had a national champ last year with Nasomi Pozo. And so it is exciting to have a men's and a women's team that are both successful. We are a little bit different in that we are separate. And for me, and I think for Coach Omi, I think that's good. I think for the athletes, it's good. I obviously have a negative amount of folk style experience. I haven't wrestled folk style since high school in '01. But I can focus solely on my athletes and he can focus solely on his athletes. We're not worried about, splitting time between the men's and women's programs. And is the head coach going to go with the men or is the head coach going to go with the women? You don't have to worry about splitting that time. We each can give our 100% of our focus to our programs. And, I think Coach Omi's been and the men's team have been at every home duel we've had this year. And when we talked about WCWA Nationals, he was the first one to speak up and say, hey, we'd love to help out. We'd love to be there. And it's awesome to be able to have two very successful programs. And, even though we both kind of have our own separate paths, we're not in the same practice room. We're not, we're doing our own things, still very much supportive of each other and supportive of what the sport's doing. And it's nice to see that, like you said, it's a huge portion of our campus is wrestlers. We have about 2,500 students overall, including undergraduate and graduate and DC students. About 950 are undergrads and about half of those are athletes. And so a huge portion of that is wrestlers. And it kind of changes the dynamic of the campus a little bit. We're actually the school's having a pep rally for the girls for nationals tomorrow. I've never seen that before, and it's exciting to have the school so invested in wrestling. We're working on getting our wrestling facility built, and on the success of these student athletes.
Now we can talk about the WCWA Nationals coming up, and as they run as a tournament director, you and Christian Flavin are basically they're doing some creative things involving trips to Sam's Club and whatnot. But we're not going to go in a full weight by weight breakdown because Ashley and I, as you can tell, we've spent about 45 minutes really talking about just some general things and see how in depth we go because that's just how our conversations go, just like at B-Dubs in Fargo. But the WCWA, again, not just joking here, February 8th and 9th, Cobb County Civic Center, Marietta, Georgia. That is outside the perimeter. We are correct, right? Marietta's outside the perimeter?
Yes, that is just outside the perimeter.
Just OTP. Yeah, that'll be $20 per day, $30 all session pass. If you're in the neighborhood, as much as I would like to have been, I know my friends Earl Smith from the Open Mat and Brandon Olinger from the Inside Trip podcast are going to come down there and do some coverage on the Open Mat side. Flow Wrestling streaming it live. I believe Wrestling Nomad will be down there for them because, he loves freestyle wrestling. So that's how you can watch this thing. Final 6 p.m. Eastern on February 9th. But again, going back to kind of the question we asked earlier, we've got a women's national champ. You wrestled in it in 2008. Now here we are, 2019, 37 schools represented, where we've got a huge crossover of incoming freshmen that have come through their entire lives wrestling now. We've also got a group of 6 seniors graduated. A 7th champ decided to go back, across the pond to Europe. 3 returning champions, 10 weight classes there for the taking, a talented freshman class. This is going to be an exciting event.
I think it's going to be very exciting. I think that we're going to see, we're not finally, but I think we're starting to see some of the I want to make sure that I emphasize things properly. Cause it's not just talent. It's that some of these women really have been developing freestyle and have this technique. And so we're going to see really great freestyle matches as opposed to some modified folk style matches, which I think is exciting. And we're seeing that next generation really push forward. It was a very exciting recruiting class all around with world team members and Pan Am, junior world team members, junior Pan Am team members. Next year there are 2 world champions that are graduating that'll be going into college. So we're finally starting to see that turnover. I think we're going to have some really exciting matches. I hope hope we give you a lot of excitement. I want people to tune in, either to Flow or, that are maybe just in the area. Maybe there's a couple of people that are still a little sleepy and lost from the Super Bowl and happen to just wander into the Civic Center. But, they walk in and they see women's wrestling, and it changes their whole perception of everything.
Yeah, looking at some of the depth of the weights. I mean, we're looking at preliminary entries, and again, these won't be finalized. Over 330. That's bigger than the NCAA Division I championships. I mean, we've got large weight classes where if you do the math, you're averaging 32, 33, 34 weight class, and I mean, just the blood round's a true blood round. You've got good wrestlers that aren't going to place. You got returning All-Americans that are going to go 2 and Q. I mean, this is just a fact of life with wrestling now. But what do you think has been the most impressive thing about just the last couple of years you've been at Life about how good wrestling is in the WCWA?
I think that again, it's some of that dedication to the outside. We're seeing girls that are they're not just focused on the college season. They're wanting to be successful internationally as well. And I really think that's starting to show in their performances in college, because they've got that extra experience from focusing on training over the summer. We're not seeing sort of that, summer hangover coming in at the fall. We're seeing women that are just coming off of international tours, and they're like, okay, now I'm ready for college. I'm ready to go. And, for us specifically, like this year we've still got a very young team. We had 18, first-time college students on our team this year, like first-year wrestlers, freshman wrestlers, and so it's really just changing the dynamic of things. Honestly, our team had about 10% of the signing class of the recruiting class. We have about 200 girls that sign straight from high school to go into college and wrestle. So, just those big numbers alone, I think it changes it. And seeing things you aren't expecting. For example, one of our 101 pounders, Faye Sherrier, she's a freshman in college. She's done some part-time stuff, but eligibility-wise, freshman in college. This is actually her first year wrestling, but she's a jiu-jitsu Pan Am gold medalist. So that brings a completely different dynamic. At the same time, at 123, we've got Sierra Powell, who's a U23 world team alternate. So, there's big stuff that you can see, and we're pulling people from all different facets of combat, and it changes what the matches look like.
I don't want you to say the name, but I want you to tell that story about, was it the jiu-jitsu or you were telling a story in Fargo about some athlete that had beaten Sarah McMahon at something. If you were allowed to tell that story, please give me the version of it and the hook of what you told her after that.
So I am allowed to tell that story. It's one of our athletes who's recovering from injury right now. So unfortunately we won't see her this weekend. But she talked about how she wanted to wrestle in college. And she's like, I wrestled on the guys team in high school. I wrestled at Fargo one time, and I was like, okay. And so I start Googling her, and I was like, wait, did you All-American twice as a freshman at Fargo and submit Sarah McMahon? She's like, yeah, that was me. I was like, you need to lead with that next time. Because you are burying the lead for sure.
Yes, you submitted Sarah McMahon, who's fought in the UFC, notable badass, no matter however you slice it. Now, when we look at the depth of some of these weight classes, again, we're not going to go weight by weight, but I just if you can separate I guess it's kind of hard to separate yourself, because being a wrestling fan, you pay attention to how good these athletes are. It's like any wrestler that pays attention, that's from Iowa, paying attention to the guys that are kicking butt at Michigan or at Lehigh or something like that. You're paying attention to wrestling, but some of the names that are jumping out on the page are of course the 3 returning champs: Dom Parrish from Simon Fraser, Brittany Marshall from Wayland Baptist, and Paige Baines, who wrestled at Grace Harbor last year as a national champ, but now is at Wayland Baptist down in Texas. Those are your 3 returning champs, but there are some hammers. Who are you looking forward to watching if you're just take your coach hat off for a minute and sit back and is like, I want to watch these athletes? Who are the fans going to want to watch when they come to Marietta this weekend or watch on Flow Live?
I mean, honestly, I know that you said, like, look at somebody else, but watching Paige Baines wrestle is super fun. She is explosive. She was on a mission last year, and that mission is just even more elevated this year. Last year, I don't think she had a point scored on her in the national tournament, and I'm not sure that she's had one scored on her yet this year. Paige is exciting to watch because she's so explosive. Any match at 143 is going to be amazing. You've got Jaden Lawrence, you've got Ashlyn Ortega, you've got Anna Luciano, Anna, I apologize, said her name wrong, but Anna's coming out of Florida and has just, stormed onto the scene. Felicity Bryant from Emmanuel has looked amazing lately, has just been just trouncing through people that others, when you look at it on paper, she has no right to be on the mat with, but then she steps out there and she just is destroying people. So I think, and then I'm going to give our own plug at 143. Zoe White is our senior. She's I believe number 2 in the NAIA right now. I think the last ranking that came out from WCWA, she was, I want to say 9 or 10. I have a feeling that's going to change because the weights have changed a little bit, but Zoe looks super tough. And obviously we're looking forward to at 123 watching Dominique Parrish wrestle. Like you said, she's a returning champ, but she's all fun to watch, tough. We're hoping that we end up getting to see her and Sierra Powell in the finals. I think that would be a really fun matchup. Because there's that difference between that new raw talent in Sierra versus, the senior who's more well seasoned, and just kind of what does that dynamic look like when they go against each other. Some other freshmen to look at, Aleda Martinez and Gracie Figueroa out of Menlo, both look super, super tough. Like I said, Jaden at 43, is tough. I think it's going to be a whole new crop of girls at All-American, that All-American and that we see medal. Christian's got this over under that 50% of the All-Americans are going to be freshmen, which I don't know in college when is the last time that's ever happened.
It's pretty much a safe bet. I think the only time we can look at it possibly happening was, back 1947 when freshmen were eligible for the first time post World War II. I think that's really because that was, last year I made that announcement at the NCAAs when Spencer Lee and Yanni Dacamahalis became true freshman champs. It was the first time since 1947 there were multiple true freshman champs in the same year. So the only other time that happened was 47. It was the only other time that freshmen were eligible. So it's a history lesson. That's the only possible time I could even think that it would even be a probability. Or plausible, rather, if we're going to bring out Mythbusters discussions. But I'm going to throw some names out that I'm curious about. Of course, you mentioned 143, and Alexis Porter there for McKendree. She's been in the finals. She's a 3-time All-American Junior World Teamer. Her teammate Alex Glaude has had an amazing summer. She was a training partner at the World Championships, U23 World Bronze medalist. A couple looking at you mentioned Gracie Figueroa, Menlo, that weight class. Again, 3 of the top 4 girls, according to the most recent rankings, freshman Felicity Taylor out of Iowa for McKendree, Michaela Welsh out here from Minnesota. She's at King. I mean, that's 3 of the top 4 freshmen there. Asia Ray is a little spark plug at 101. She was a junior world bronze medalist from Wayland Baptist. I mean, there's fireworks. And here's another thing too. There are 2 athletes who are in Final X finals that are also in. Alex Hedrick, she's ranked 3rd at Dom Parrish's weight class. They met in the finals last year as teammates. She was second to Helen Maroulis of Final X, and Corey Bullock from McKendree is behind her. She's like number 2 on the depth chart on her own team behind Sydney Kimber at 170. So there's legit depth, not just at the WCWA level, but from a developmental standpoint at USA Wrestling, we got athletes that are, right there for world teams and winning world medals. This is bonkers.
Well, and speaking of bonkers, I mean, think about that. So we've got girls that were in Final X that aren't ranked number 1 in their weight class right now.
Yeah, the 2 I mentioned, Alex is ranked 3rd and Corey's ranked 8th.
Right. So, I mean, obviously great wrestlers, obviously, senior national team, but they're still not ranked number 1 right now. Now, there may be a couple different things that go into that, but when you start to look at the depth, that it just that, they're not guaranteed the number 1 spot, I think that says a lot about where we're at as far as women's wrestling.
And it's just crazy because we're actually seeing the entire, I mean, it's like another, there's been the Trailblazers as the first year. We can talk about growth. We almost beat this drum too much about how much it's getting better, how deeper it's getting. I mean, we've done that on this show. I mean, I'm guilty of it almost every time I talk about women's wrestling. We talk about how much it's getting. I mean, this is, we're seeing a real metamorphosis, so to speak, in this era of athletes, these 40 freshmen that are predicted by your assistant coach. You think it's going to place. I mean, it could be a changing of the guard. It could be hype, could be, who knows, could be a bunch of different things. But, these athletes are they're getting high class training earlier. They're coming in ready, and, they're treating it just like the guys do.
Yeah, and I think like I said, I'm willing to bet on Christian just because, like I said earlier, wrestling encyclopedia. So
friendly wagers only, Buffalo wings only, right? No monetary wagers here, because that would be job losing worthy. Because
obviously Buffalo wings only, clearly. But again, like look at coming into next year, Emily Shilson and Macy Kilty both are still in high school, both world champions that are getting ready to graduate. So going into next year, what does that freshman class look like? It just seems like it keeps elevating. I'm going to throw one more name that I want you to remember, mostly because I'm excited because I haven't actually gotten to see her wrestle in person yet. And hopefully I don't completely slaughter her name, but she's ranked number 2 at 101, Jeanette Caldera from Jamestown. She texted Nina Pham earlier this year, and Nina is no slouch. Nina and Asia Ray are obviously teammates at Wayland and obviously getting better, training with each other. So to see the girl that was able to put 11 points on the board against Nina, I'm excited to see what that looks like.
Tournament-wise, Menlo comes in ranked number 1, McKendree 2, Wayland Baptist 3. Again, these tournament points, Simon Fraser with its, again, great tradition being up in Canada, north of the 49th. They've been doing that women's wrestling thing for a long, long time up there. I've coached Justin Abdu pulling double duty with its men's and women's team. But, team-wise, last year's team race came down to the very end with Kayla Miracle getting the win and becoming a 4-time champ and giving Campbellsville the victory. But what do you expect from a team race this year?
I'd like to say that I want it to be really, really close. I'd like to say that we're going to be in it. That we're very young. To even be hoping for that. But I think that I think if you look at it, you see a separation. I would be shocked if Menlo doesn't win.
Shocked. And it would be that would be shocked, you say, shocked.
I would be shocked. And I think there would have to be a lot of things that go wrong for them, in order for that to happen. Again, like if we look at where they've got girls ranked, I'm scrolling through the January rankings that came out obviously earlier this month. But they've got 2 girls at number 1. They've got at 91, they've got a 4 and a 5. They've got a number 2 at 70, another number 4 at 55. They're just tough. A number 3 at 36. They're so well rounded. And I think that also speaks to how strong California as a state is. They're getting a lot of those California girls. Of course, California's had women's wrestling in high school since always, as far as my wrestling memory knows. And, they stay close to home and they're able to really just put in work. Joey's doing a great job out there getting top recruits and just keeping them strong and fighting hard. And it's really going to take a community effort to beat them. We're going to have to, and that for anyone to beat them, like at this point, like I'm not saying it's going to take a community effort and life's going to make it happen this year. I think we're a year or two out, but they're going to have some dominoes fall the wrong way, in my opinion.
Yeah, and as they've had that strong tradition, of course, Sarah and Catherine Fulp Allen came out of there. The late Lee Allen started the women's program there. But looking at, Menlo's never won a title. They actually haven't even finished second. So historically, we've had the only teams that have won championships: Missouri Valley, University of Cumberland, Oklahoma City, Simon Fraser, King, and Campbellsville. That's it since the WCWA officially started its tournament in 2004. So time is ripe now, I guess, for a new champ. in that respect, we saw Campbellsville break through last year. But all right, Ashley, before we get to the fun part, and this is not talking about our screen names from back in the day, just kind of give people a little bit of a refresher on where things stand with the NAIA having an invitational championship later this year in March for its women's program. That's that step towards being a championship sport, and kind of where the WCWA is in your position in terms of its championships being, I guess, for lack of a better term, in flux.
Well, this year, like you said, NAIA, first year we're officially recognized, having an official NAIA invitational. First year recognized as an NAIA sport, really. Hopefully we've got at least one more year as an invitational, and then we have the chance to move to an NAIA championship, a full championship sport going in from year 2 to year 3. And like you talked about earlier, there's 37 teams that are in the WCWA championship. There are a couple more that aren't there because from a budgetary standpoint, it was, you have to choose. Do you go to WCWAs or do you go to the NAIA Invitational? And for institutions to finally be recognized by the NAIA for that sport, it's important to put that money towards the NAIA and to make that investment, which, for us, we're lucky we're hosting the championship. So we didn't have to choose, because that would have been a really tough conversation. And if we would have been able to make it work, it wouldn't have been with 15 athletes. It would have been a far smaller number that we would have been bringing to the tournament. I think it's going to be interesting and hard to see what happens over the next couple of years, as, like I said, from budgetary reasons, NAIA schools are forced to choose, what they do. And, I think we're probably still a couple years out, a few, honestly, from the NCAA recognizing women's wrestling as an emerging sport. And there's a lot of factors that go into that. And, the talk now is that as NCAA would make it an emerging sport, it would be sort of based off that men's volleyball model that D1, D2, and D3 all compete against each other in the same NCAA championship. And so that will really change the dynamic. I hope it doesn't leave our junior colleges in the dust, because obviously we need to grow those programs as well for a lot of reasons. But I think looking forward, the most interesting thing that we're going to see is that the way that we define wrestling in college for women is going to be very different than how we define wrestling in college for men. For example, I think it goes without saying that, if you want to be on a top team in men's wrestling, you're going to go D1, right? Like, there's no question. Obviously, there's some good NAIA schools, but if you're the best of the best, you're going to go to an NCAA D1 program. Does that seem fair?
Yeah, I'd say so.
So now we look at it, and we're looking at the number 1 and 3 ranked programs in the WCWA are NAIA schools. Last year's champ was an NAIA school. And so when you're going to go and you're looking at, hey, do I go NCAA or do I go NAIA? There are going to be completely different factors that go into it, because NAIA schools are, it's not the same as in men's wrestling. The NAIA schools are still very much top tier programs. And, it's very different on how we look at it. And I think it'll be interesting to see how the high school athletes interpret that, how they realize what's going on, and sort of how coaches are able to explain that to recruits, and that, you're not getting less from an NAIA institution. In a lot of cases, you might be getting more, because, a new NCAA program for women's wrestling is going to start out developmental. It's going to start out smaller. Whereas if you have a team, like Menlo, if they win the championship this year, they win WCWAs, and then if they win NAIAs, you're walking into a powerhouse. So how could you turn that down just to say that you went to a program that had different letters in front of, as far as the governing body goes? So I think that'll be what's really interesting moving forward.
Of note, 10 of the 15 champions historically and the WCW have come from NAIA programs. Interestingly enough, the other 5 titles won by schools that were previously NAIA programs. King started as an NAIA school, now reclassified Division II, as did Simon Fraser. So there's your Trivia Tuesday. Now, Ashley Sword. We have a little segment, Short Time on Short Time, that I'm bringing back. It's 10 questions. First thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready for the challenge?
No. but I'll do it anyway.
3, 2, 1, 0.
All right, start the clock. Question 1. In an eating contest between me and Kayla Morano, who wins?
Oh, God, it's Kayla. Hands down, it's Kayla.
False, it's Aaron Tomio. Question 2. Worst place you've ever traveled? Not necessarily for wrestling.
Not necessarily for wrestling. The worst place. Okay, I really didn't like being in Visalia in California last year. It was not my favorite. It was not great.
Question 3. One school you would wish starts a women's wrestling program?
Anything in Florida.
True or false? You were once introduced to Christy Davis years after you already knew her.
True.
5. Meanest opponent you've ever faced?
Probably Christian.
Question 6. Favorite wrestling shoe of all time?
Oh, the Kale version ones, the original ones from 2004, the Asics, those were the best. I got the relaunch. I wear them now. I can't say that because we're sponsored by Adidas. I used to love those shoes.
Question 7. You're from the South. Grits, yes. Grits, no.
Yes, but I like them with cheese, even though that's sacrilege.
That is not sacrilege. I don't care what anybody says. Question 8. Favorite TV guilty pleasure?
Oh, gosh. Game of Thrones? Can you be guilty about that?
Absolutely not. Winter is coming. Behold. I don't know. I thought the Super Bowl commercial where they killed the Bud Knight was quite amazing. Matter of fact,
I didn't even get to watch the Super Bowl. I was moving mad.
Okay, once we get done with this, go Google the Game of Thrones Bud Light commercial. That's all you need to know. So, matter of fact, perfect. My friend Amanda, the Purdue SID, was sitting next to me. She was wearing Game of Thrones socks yesterday at the Purdue-Minnesota match. So, winter is coming. Actually, last year, winter is here. It was Polar Vortex time. Anyway, I've stopped the clock. I don't know. Question 9. Biggest Fargo pet peeve, mosquitoes or dorm life?
Mosquitoes.
Or is there one that I didn't mention that you would like to throw out there? Mine is highway construction.
Just heat. Just the heat.
Heat. Okay, yes. Okay, question 10. Which criminal mastermind does Georgia wrestling legend Sean Haig resemble the most?
I'm not from Georgia, Jason. All right, so you know what? I'm gonna go with my gut and say the Hamburglar.
No, no, we need to re-ask that question. So let me think of something else. Question 10. Okay, the WCWA Women's Nationals coming to outside the perimeter at the Cobb County Civic Center. Sorry, I just can't. I watched way too much WCW wrestling growing up. Whereas this is the WCWA. February 8th to 9th, live on Flow. If you're in the area and outside the perimeter, or if you're inside, $20 per day, $30, all session tickets, information there. Again, brackets at Flow Arena at arena.flowwrestling.org. Ashley, anything else before we go? Care to embarrass me more about my screen name and my antics as a 21-year-old?
I mean, you called yourself ODU Wildman. I think that speaks for itself.
Didn't call myself that. I earned that title. Thank you very much. Still my Skype handle. Because you can't change it once you've established it. Anyway, all right. On that note, I think that's where we mic drop. Ashley, thank you. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Jason. I appreciate it.
The Short Time Wrestling Podcast is proudly outfitted by Compound Clothing. Shirts, singlets, custom gear orders, everything you need. Call up Cliff and the crew at cmpteamwear.com. Hey, you know what? Did you like the show? You want to hit that subscribe button? MattTalkOnline.com/listen. Various different ways to subscribe to this show on your favorite podcatcher of choice. And if you're already subscribed and you already listened and you love the show and you want to support this show and this network, MattTalkOnline.com/join the team. Become a team member today.